Hey, it's Allie Edwards and welcome to another episode of Craft the Story. This week I am coming to you in super casual mode to talk about what do you do when you don't feel like doing the thing. In the context of what we're talking about here, the thing is memory keeping or scrapbooking. What do you do when you don't feel motivated? What do you do when maybe you have time, you've set aside some time, and you sit down at your table and you look at whatever you have in front of you and you just have a hard time getting started or moving forward? That's what we're going to talk about today. Today I've got 5 tips to help you when you don't feel motivated with scrapbooking. So this topic actually came about a couple years ago when I wrote a blog post about this topic, and I'm taking the content from that blog post and turning it into a video here, adding a few other thoughts and things along the way. This all started because Aaron and I had a conversation. Aaron is my husband, he's a musician, and we had a conversation about creativity. And when you hit those points in the road where you feel like you're burned out or you're not motivated, and we were just talking about what do you do in those situations, and I think that sometimes people, when they get into that situation where they're not feeling creative or they're not feeling motivated, it can feel like it's the end, right? And the reality, and what I know to be true after doing this for years and years, like a sustained life of creativity, is that it always comes back. For me, there's been an absolute ebb and a flow to creativity, to motivation, to feeling excited about projects, to not wanting to do anything at all, right? Like that is a very normal thing. So if you're feeling that first and foremost, I would say it's normal. Let's ride those waves. We can ride those waves together. So what I've put together here is 5 tips or 5 things to do when you're not feeling motivated, but you might have some time. And we'll talk about a couple other things at the end too. So for me, when I have time set aside for memory keeping, let's say it's not like direct work related or direct project related, or it might be that I feel like I want to do something, but I don't necessarily want to make a scrapbook layout, but I want to do something that's kind of moving me forward, and that's the angle that I take when I'm not feeling motivated. So the number one thing, or the first thing that I do if I'm not feeling motivated and I still have some time, is I will organize my photos. So for me, that means going into my photo archives, organizing, deleting. So organizing for me often looks like putting things in folders or making sure that they're in the right place in my organization system in the photo program that I'm using. Right now, I'm just using the Photos program. I moved from Aperture. I know many people use Lightroom. Photos for me, which is just the plain basic Apple program, seems to be working just fine right now. And my organization system for that is based on folders. So I do folders by month, and then I also do project folders for all of the different memory keeping projects I have. So when I'm not feeling motivated, one thing I know to be true is if I go into my photos and I start doing some organizing, which organizing for me really actually just means deleting, is really, because I start with, like, when I'm importing them, they go into folders. But deleting really is cleaning up my photo archives. And as I go through there, as I'm deleting the photos, one of the things that happens is I see stories, right? I see stories that I want to tell because the photos are jumping off points for stories. So if I'm not feeling motivated, literally sitting at my computer or scrolling through my phone, looking at my photo archives, even for the last month or so, often will make me really excited and make me want to go tell a story. And it might take me in a different direction than I had originally anticipated, but I don't care about that. The thing that I care about is that I'm getting stories told. So definitely diving in to photos, deleting old photos, getting, just cleaning it up. That's definitely one thing that helps me in terms of getting me re-motivated to tell some more stories. The number 2 thing I do when I'm not feeling motivated for memory keeping is I look at it as an opportunity to clean up my workspace and or purge out projects or products that I am not using, don't plan to use, those sort of things. Just generally cleaning up my space. Now, again, after years of doing this, I know that that always reinvigorates me. And it does that for a couple reasons. One is I like working with less in terms of less products. I like having less choices in front of me when I am making scrapbook pages. I know not everybody's like that, but that for me is definitely something that helps me focus on the actual stories that I want to tell. I also know that as I go through the stacks and piles, and I'm like looking at my piles around the office here, as I go through those stacks and piles and as I'm cleaning things up, stories jump out at me, right? That's another thing that happens. So I'm going through my piles and I'm like, oh, okay, I need to put this somewhere. And then I look at something and I'm like, oh yeah, that can be a story. That's a jumping off point. That's a story spark. And so when I encounter those things, I usually set them over to the side, or I have a list, like an ongoing list of stories that I want to tell. Usually here on my project table is where I have specific things that are waiting to be used for specific stories or specific projects. But cleaning up, reorganizing, I know a lot of you guys saw my chipboard reorganization video last week. It was so fun to receive the response for that, because a lot of you were like, I'm diving in, I'm doing it, I'm organizing by shape. I think there were also lots of discussions about shape versus color versus theme. And what I want to say to you guys about any of those things is figure out what works for you, right? And the only way that you can do that is by trying something. And sometimes we try something and it doesn't work. I take that as information, right? Information to say, okay, well, maybe shape isn't the best route for me personally, and maybe organizing by theme makes more sense. Totally cool. Maybe organizing by color makes more sense for you. Yes. But what my point in all of that is, through that process of cleaning things up, organizing things, you saw last week how that really helped lead right into a story that I want to tell, and I was able to easily support that story through the process of cleaning things up. So number 2, again, is cleaning, purging, reorganizing your supplies to help you feel ready when you want a scrapbook. But really what it does is it will probably give you a little bit of motivation, because you'll see, literally, you'll see stories pop up for you that then maybe you'll feel more excited again. If you're feeling burned out altogether and you're just like, I don't want to look at any supplies, I don't want to do anything with my hands, I just need a break, which is completely legit. One of the things that I often recommend, if that is the case, is to literally just focus on the story for a while. And for me, Instagram has continued to be that place where I will write stories that are then held in time, or in a spot for me to be able to go on later and then copy and paste them into a project. And you guys have seen me do that here before, but you don't have to be on social media to do that. I was having a conversation with a friend recently where I was talking about, I was reading Joan Didion's new book. Actually, this was on an interview for the Roots Tech event. I was talking about how I was reading this Joan Didion book in the bathtub, and it's a memoir, short essay sort of book. And as I was reading that, I started getting really inspired and started thinking of a number of different stories from when I was a little kid. And I got out of the bathtub, walked down the hallway, got my iPad, came back to the bathtub. We have a tub that has like a tile surround on it, so there's some space to be able to have your iPad sitting there. And I started typing up stories, right? So that's, not necessarily in a time where I was actively scrapbooking, but what I was doing was I was actively capturing some stories as they were coming to me. And I use Evernote, which is a note-taking program on my computer, and Evernote can sync to my phone, my iPad, my computer, so that when I come on my phone, like let's say I'm picking up the kids or I have some extra time and some story pops up in my head, whether it's a yesterday story or a today story, I can open up Evernote, I can type up my notes or my ideas or my bullet list or whatever it is, the thoughts that are coming at me about a particular story, and then I have it saved and I can access it on all of my different devices for copying and pasting in the future. Now, all of those kinds of stories that I might write in Evernote. Not all of those stories get translated into scrapbook pages. Sometimes I have memories of other things, maybe that it's not a story that I want to tell necessarily in a scrapbook, but I'm still getting them out of my head and into a document or into somewhere else. And whether you do that by hand or by computer, I think the main thing is that you are figuring out a way for yourself to hold some of those stories when you're not actively scrapbooking, right? And I think that can be a big shift for a lot of people who, come into scrapbooking and you maybe think, scrapbooking looks like this. Scrapbooking happens like this. Scrapbooking is when I sit here and I do this. And what I want to say about that is that scrapbooking is actually lots and lots of different things, right? It's lots of different memory keeping tasks. It's lots of different opportunities for us to be paying attention and then be grabbing those stories as they are happening. So you may not feel motivated to scrapbook or to, get crafty or creative, but you may feel super motivated to tell a story. And I want you to take advantage of those times when they pop up for you, or if it's just a time when you're not feeling motivated in general about scrapbooking, it's still another way that you can be working on storytelling, even in those times when maybe you're not feeling as motivated. So number 4 for me, when I'm not feeling motivated, for me it's interesting because I have a lot of deadlines. So a lot of the projects that I do and things that I'm putting together are deadline related, or they have some end result, right? So I am forced is in quotations, because of a timeline to complete a project. And when you don't have any timelines or you don't have any deadlines, it can be really hard to finish up some of this stuff because you end up being like, oh, I could do this any number of ways, or I don't want to make a decision on how I'm going to actually complete this page because I'm going to come back to it next time or whatever. I don't have a lot of opportunity to do that. And I think that that's probably leads to me completing more pages and finishing more projects because there is a deadline involved. But when I have projects that I need to do, and maybe I don't feel like doing the crafty part of them or the designy part of them today, the fourth, I think we're on number 4, and the fourth thing I will do is print the photos and have that be a separate task. Like, the separate task doesn't need to be the creative crafty part. The task can just be, I'm going to print photos today. I'm going to take my Project Life album from 2016 that I'm still working on, and I'm going to sit at my computer with that album and I'm going to print out all the photos that I need to complete that album. Or I'm going to print for 15 minutes, whatever slice of time that you might have, take advantage of that, right? Some of these tasks, these memory keeping, storytelling tasks, can take 5, 10, 15 minutes, right? There's different things take different amount of time. So even if I was to go over and sit at my computer for 10 minutes, I could print out probably at least a couple weeks of photos for Project Life in 2016 and then be ready when I do feel motivated to go in and actually complete, finish up the stories, do any of the crafty parts that I want to do on there. The photos are ready and waiting for me. So it's kind of, I think for me, when I lack motivation, remembering that there are these smaller tasks that I can do, that I can kind of break it up. Okay, I can clean up today. I can print photos tomorrow. I can, then, the next day, maybe I'll be ready to actually bring those things all together on a scrapbook page. A lot of this is giving yourself permission to, right? Permission for it to not be into it at a specific point in time, because again, that is a reality, I think, for all of us. All right, and then the fifth thing that I do when I'm not feeling motivated is I will review past projects. I'll get out my albums, I'll get out a 6x8 album, I'll get out a 12x12 album. I will flip through and almost this is, I think, one of the things that I do that without a doubt helps me remember why I do this in the first place and what I love about it, and makes me, or helps me feel excited about continuing to do it. Whether or not I do it in that particular day or not is another story. But it definitely, going back and looking at the past projects, does really bring a lot of joy to me and helps me get excited about continuing to do it in the future. So that's something that I would highly recommend. If you're not feeling motivated, or you're just feeling kind of burned out, you know, the option is always there to just walk away for a while too. And I'm gonna come back and talk about that in a minute. But picking up your past projects, I think, is definitely a way to help reinvigorate you or help you get excited, again, because it reconnects you with why you're doing this in the first place. So revisiting past projects, that's number 5. So the last tip that I wanna share, we can call this number 6, we can call this a bonus tip or whatever we wanna call it. When I am not feeling motivated, one option that is always available to you and to me that I always have to remember is to just take a break, is to literally like walk away for a while. Walk away, go do something else completely. During my work day when I'm sitting here and I have you know, design work that I need to do and I have project work that I need to do, if I am really having a hard time, like if things don't feel like they're coming together, usually what I will do is I will get up and I will go outside and I will walk around a little bit outside. I'll either go for a walk, I will exercise, I'll get a snack, like I will do something different that releases my brain from whatever the tension it was related to that project, right? Oh, I'm not feeling this. Oh my God, I have to do this. Oh, you know, those kinds of feelings. If I actually remove myself from my work environment, remove myself from my office, go outside, walk around, pick up a book that has nothing to do with memory keeping or scrapbooking, right? Read a book for even 20 minutes to give my brain a break and allow it to shift into, in my head, when I think about it, it's like a different way of thinking, right? I'm kind of letting go my thoughts about memory keeping, scrapbooking for a little bit so that I can go and think about something else. Helps me then when I come back to it. Like I feel refreshed. I feel like I'm bringing something to the table again. But walking away is always an option. And I, you know, walking away temporarily, I think for most of us, because if you're here and you're watching this video, you probably love scrapbooking already. Like that's probably a part of your lifestyle. But you probably also experience these times where you're like, I need a break. And I want you to listen to yourself. When you need a break, take a break. Let's give permission to ourselves and each other to, if we need a break, take a break. Scrapbooking will still be here. Memory keeping will still be here. The stories will still be here, right? Storytelling, stories don't expire. They don't, you know, it's not just because I haven't told a story from, you know, 2006, like that story doesn't expire. I can always go back in and tell that story. And if I tell it, you know, tomorrow, I might be telling it with some different kinds of motivation or some, I'll just be coming at it from a different point of view, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Oh, another thing I wanted to say, I just looked down at my notes here. One thing that I do to take a break sometimes is take a shower. I know that when I go in and I take a shower, like different ideas come up to me. It's just like it's like you're cleaning your body and it's also an opportunity to clean out your mind. That's kind of the way that I think about it a little bit. It gives me there's a shift in my activity that then when I come back to my office, because most of the time I need to come back to the office to finish up my work for the day, I'm able to look at things from a different point of view and that just usually helps. So changing your environment, doing something different for a little bit, and then coming back to it, I think can be a really valuable piece of the process. Also, if you do that for a longer period of time, you know, if this isn't your job, like it is for me, when you come back to it, you will come back to it with all of the new experiences that you've experienced, right? And potentially a different take. And maybe for you, if you're re-entering or restarting memory keeping, you're more clear now of what is the really important pieces of you and the pieces for you in this process. You know, maybe you're less about the crafty part and you're more about the words and photos, or maybe you're more about the crafty part now and the words and photos are, you know, taking a back seat. Like you can go back and forth on those things as well. Lots of permission here today. All right, so I hope these tips are helpful. Just kind of a fun and casual conversation today about what to do when you're not feeling motivated to do scrapbooking or memory keeping, with the overarching reminder that creativity always comes back. Creativity, there is an ebb and a flow. Sometimes you're feeling it, sometimes you're not feeling it, and let's just ride those waves together. All right, if you guys are enjoying this content, please hit subscribe if you are on YouTube. If you're on my blog, you can also hit subscribe. If you do that for these videos, then you're notified each week when a new video comes up. That's it for this week. We'll see you back here next week.